4 years ago, I vividly remember sitting on a cold concrete bench in jail. The casual conversations between inmates and officers were surreal, as if this were any other Saturday. I hadn't committed a crime, and yet here I was, trapped, powerless. Over 6 short months, I had quietly stumbled my way through a divorce, that mistaken arrest, and then facing the painful truth that I couldn't just put this all behind me. After losing 30 pounds, half my hair, and what felt like my final shred of hope, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, an autoimmune disease triggered by all that stress. Witnessing the fallout, 2 realities became obvious. First, the idea of bouncing back is a myth designed to make others more comfortable when faced with our uncertainty. We don't bounce back from trauma. We rebuild from the ground up. And the second reality, I really didn't know how I would do that. The psychotherapist in me recognized myself as my newest patient, and the most important case study I would ever get the chance to observe. As a mental health professional, and as a human being at the end of her rapidly fraying rope, I had to know, how do we put the pieces back together stronger after we completely fall apart? So I set off on a quest to personally experiment with the interventions I had given patients over the past decade, and honestly, anything else to delay the inevitable. The 50-minute sweat sessions on the couch of a relative stranger. Yes, even therapists avoid therapy. Flash forward a few months. I find myself impulsively booking a flight that departs in just 3 weeks, a cliche post-divorce escape to Puerto Rico, and upping the ante with a scuba tour, despite a lifelong fear of boats. Fortunately, there were only minor injuries after jumping off waterfalls, body surfing rivers, vomiting off of the back of the dive boat, yes, also known as chumming, apparently, and kayaking for the first time in the open ocean at night without a life jacket. I came home feeling like 100 pounds had been lifted. In the midst of experimenting with anything and everything in pursuit of post-traumatic growth, I was intrigued. Now you have to know, aside from my own secret hopes, I really don't believe in shortcuts. But if there is a silver bullet, this was it. A fast-acting, emotional pain reliever with long-term results and desirable side effects. The active ingredient, intentional discomfort. I began calling these experiences resiliency field trips, though, because this isn't about difficulty just for the sake of difficulty. Now, a field trip, that's about curiosity, learning, and fun, an adventure away from our typical routine. I invited others to join in to test this theory. For our first group field trip, around 20 of us descended on a few surprised, gruff older men at a skeet shoot range tucked away in the mountains, nervously picked up shotguns, and one by one, busted some clay. Over the years, we've brunched blindfolded in public, climbed a few mountains, and of course, we had to try a few bugs. After all this experimentation, the 3 rules of a resiliency field trip came together. It's new, it's slightly scary, and it's intentional. The impact boils down to what I noticed most after Puerto Rico, a sharp decline in fear, which left a wide opening for possibility. See, fear protects us from pain, but when we retreat into a comfortable routine, fear grows unchecked, like a weed. We wake up one day feeling trapped. Resilience is the counterweight to fear. It's a skill that requires practice and can be learned by anyone. When we step into uncertainty with curiosity, we experience fear in a positive context, witness our triumph over our own resistance, and reinforce new pathways in the brain that turn down the volume on fear. This is called stress inoculation, the development of an adaptive response from stress exposure, building up immunity to the negative effects of future stress. Kind of like getting a flu shot, if flu shots were fun. Now, this all sounded too good to be true. If there was one thing I could give my patients, it would be a stress vaccine. But the difference between those who participated in resiliency field trips and those who did not was profound. So why those 3 deceptively simple rules? First, a resiliency field trip is new. When our brains encounter a novel experience, we remember it, anchoring in that positive association. Second, a resiliency field trip is slightly scary. This is the core ingredient, discomfort. We can't very well expand our comfort zones without stepping just outside of them. And third, a resiliency field trip is intentional. Discomfort alone simply sends us scurrying back for safety. We must step into uncertainty with curiosity. Resiliency field trips can be created anytime, anywhere, and on any budget. But most importantly, they reflect what excites and challenges you. That crazy trip to Puerto Rico was an intense stretch for me, but I was also wildly uncomfortable going to dinner and a movie alone 2 years later. Here's the best part. This practice teaches us to see possibility even in life's unplanned field trips. Like a brave woman we'll call Amy. Amy showed up in therapy with a common complaint: burnout. 2 years earlier, her 4-year-old son, who we'll call Ben, had been diagnosed with leukemia, after which Amy quit her job to become his full-time caregiver. She simply couldn't remember who she was before she was the mom of a beautiful boy with cancer. Now, Amy worked through boxes of tissues in session, but she discovered her own way forward while trapped in a parking garage stairwell. Already running very late for yet another medical checkup, Amy and Ben had rushed up to the 2nd floor, but the door was locked. And in their hurry, they just continued up, trying the door each time. Just before reaching the top floor, Amy missed a stair, came down hard on her shin. The tears spilled over, and she broke down right there on the concrete landing. It was a simple mistake. Only employees could access the hospital through that stairwell. And while Amy cursed herself, young Ben waited for a break between sobs and then cautiously asked, "Can we go get ice cream now?" Now laughing, Amy surrendered, and in that moment transformed the never enough guilt trap she had been stuck in since the day he was diagnosed into possibility. Walking across the street to a busy gas station, they enjoyed ice cream bars right there on the grass out front, without a care in the world besides that moment of joy together. Amy had recognized the bigger invitation in her son's innocent suggestion, but that's not the exciting part. That's just where the ripple begins. Like many of us, Amy had become trapped in a victim mindset where life was happening to her and she felt powerless. But in that moment of suffering, Amy chose possibility. Ice cream was just the beginning, leading to hiring a part-time caregiver. And by our next session, Amy surprised us both by enrolling in art school. Resilience expands our whole comfort zone, immediately impacting every other area of our lives, from making new friends to jumping on scary opportunities like picking up a paintbrush or talking in front of all of you today. This means that helping professionals such as myself can empower our patients to author their own journey forward from a place of confident possibility, an endlessly renewable superpower anchored in by those extremely memorable, slightly scary experiences. Yes, the Resiliency Field Trip is a simple idea, and that's precisely why it should grab our attention. More and more of our family, friends, and neighbors are suffering with anxiety, depression, and even suicide risk, despite outward appearances. Perhaps you too have felt overwhelmed and hopeless. This is a powerful practice of inviting discomfort back inside our comfort zones so that we too can laugh in the face of everyday stress and remain flexible in life's coming storms. We all have our own version of that cold, concrete bench that began my journey. Fortunately, my visit to jail was brief, charges never filed, and the arrest expunged. In a small courtroom, the city prosecutor shook my hand and said, "It's as if it never happened." I am so glad that it did. Looking back, that was the first field trip that led to all of the others, and ultimately, a dramatically different perspective on the unpredictable road ahead. Don't wait for tragedy. Resilience is just a field trip away.